Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. My name is Nick. So yesterday I went over the first half of my favorite, or some of my favorite hair metal albums. Today I'm going to kind of cover the second half of that list. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you click on that link down below. Go check out the Vinyl Den Facebook group. I know I say it every episode, just a cool place to continue the music conversation. There's also a couple other links down there. There's one for the Vinyl Den merch page. We get Vinyl Den t-shirts and sweatshirts on there. There's a link for the Vinyl Den Patreon page. If you want to support the show, it's always greatly appreciated. You can support the show for as little as $1 a month. There's also a couple other links. There's one for the Vinyl Den Spotify and Apple Music playlists, where every week we're just kind of compiling music that we're talking about here on the channel and putting it all on a playlist for everyone to enjoy. So make sure you check all that out. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give the old thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time we release new episodes. To kind of recap from the first episode, or from the first half of the episode, you know, I grew up in the 80s, you know, in that like mid to late 80s period. I really kind of started forming my own musical interests and really fell in love with a lot of those hair metal or glam metal albums from that period. So in the first half of the episode, I think it was like 5 albums I went over. And then in this episode, I've got 5 or 6 other ones that I'm kind of go over and kind of discuss, you know, why I love the albums and some of the great things about them. Another album that I think gets, remembered for one particular song, but overall is a much better album than people give it credit for. And that is The Great Radio Controversy by Tesla. And if you look on this hype sticker from Record Store Day, it even just mentions Love Song, which, like I said, is a great song, but you know, it's the other music on this album that make it overall just a fantastic album. And you know, I chuckled when I saw the Obi strip on Record Store Day, and I saw them advertise it like that. I'm like, come on, yes, that is a great song. Probably my favorite Tesla song is Love Song. But there's also so many other great tracks on this album, and it was definitely one I was happy to grab. Another one is this next one is one that was probably my second or third most played album of the late 80s, and that is Skid Row's self-titled release. I actually just picked up the Skid Row box set. Actually got a smoking deal on it. It was like $100 on Amazon, but I've always loved this album. I've got a couple copies of this. This is the purple one that came out a couple years back. I've got an original pressing of it also. And this was really mainly my only kind of entry into Skid Row's catalog. Yeah, I'd listened to Slave to the Grind a couple of times. I was never a huge fan, but it was really this album that kind of sparked my interest again in this band. When I picked up this the reissue, like I said, a couple years ago, I really kind of started digging back into Skid Row's discography, and I ended up missing out on the Slave to the Grind when it was released on Record Store Day a couple years ago. So I was really happy to grab that box set. But you know, just a great another great one of those hair metal or glam metal bands that, even though it's actually Skid Row probably shouldn't really fit into that category. I never really considered them part of that glam metal scene, even though a lot of people do. They were a little bit more heavy, a little bit more hard rock than some of the other bands that came around in that period. The next album is another one of those albums that probably one of my most played albums of the late 80s. I had this on cassette that I probably wore out. I also had this on vinyl. And this is actually the music on vinyl released from a couple years ago. But this is Pride by White Lion. You know, White Lion was the big hit off here was When the Children Cry, which is a pretty good, you know, it was one of those late 80s power ballads. And then with their next album, Big Game, they had a big hit with the cover of Golden Earrings, Radar Love, which probably gets a little bit more radio play even, you know, 20, 25 years after it was released than probably what it did, you know, in that late 80s period, early 90s period when Big Game was released, just because music was a little bit different there. But, you know, you hear it on, you know, Radar Love, you hear their cover on like classic rock stations and stuff like that. But anyway, back to Pride, though. Fantastic album. Another one of those albums that, you might know it for that one song. That's, by no means my favorite song on this album. It's got a bunch of other great hits on there. A little more, some other ones aren't that, in that power ballad mode. Some are definitely a little more rock. But songs like Hungry, Wait is another great track. All You Need Is Rock and Roll is another great one. Tell Me. Just a bunch of great hits on here. And it's probably another one of those albums. You can probably say that for a lot of these albums where they kind of are largely remembered for one track, but there's a lot of other stuff on there that's equally as good, if not even better. The last three I've got are probably, if you go online and look, it's probably, if you look up greatest hair metal albums, they're probably, all three of these are probably in the top three, even though one is one I probably wouldn't really consider a hair metal album, even though a lot of people really do. But anyway, the first one is Open Up and Say Ah by Poison. Another one of those great 80s albums. Every Rose Has a Thorn is probably the biggest hit off of here. But a bunch of other great tracks on here. Nothing But a Good Time, Good Love, what was some other great ones on here? Fallen Angel is probably my favorite song off this album. And actually, MXPX did a pretty good cover of it several years back. But anyway, another great one of those 80s hair metal albums. The next one is one that is a hair metal album, but a little more on the heavier side, and that is Dr. Feelgood by Motley Crue. Dr. Feelgood. There's a lot of tracks off of here that obviously kind of, a lot of them are written by, actually the whole album I think might have been written by Nikki Sixx, but Kickstart My Heart was about Nikki Sixx overdosing, and there's some little more different themes on this album than maybe some of the other ones, but definitely a little heavier edge when it came to hair metal. But if there's anyone that says this in a hair metal band, I mean, look at the back cover of that. Look at the hair on them people. But anyway, fantastic album. And this was 89, I think. I have to look at my notes here. This was, it was 89 when this was released. So it's like the very end of kind of what I consider the hair metal period. And, there definitely is a harder edge to a lot of the songs on this album. But, as far as like 80s hair metal bands, it's definitely one of my favorites. The last album on my list is one that, if I'm being honest, it's probably one of my top 2 or 3 albums of the 80s overall. And I've never considered this band a hair metal band. But in the very beginning period when this album came out, they're very much in that hair metal conversation. At least the lead singer was. When that is Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. And the only reason I kind of put them, or at least this album, in the hair metal category, and you can drop me a comment down below and let me know if you disagree at all, but is the way that Axl Rose looked in the Welcome to the Jungle video. Definitely had a glam kind of look to him, even though it was definitely very different with the rest of the band. Slash, Duff, Izzy, the rest of the band definitely had more of a rock kind of look or vibe to their look. And it was mainly just the way Axl looked in this video. And really after that, you didn't really see a whole lot of that from the band over this period, or at least after this period, or after the initial release of that video. And I think it was really Appetite for Destruction that really kind of helped usher in a different sound to rock music. They kind of helped bring back a little more of the blues vibe to rock music that had been missing for much of the decade, and helped really kind of change the overall tone with rock music moving forward. Obviously, it was there were other influences in there with more of the more traditional metal sound. If you go with like Metallica when they released the Black Album and things like that, but I think Appetite for Destruction really kind of overall kind of ushered in the end of the hair metal era by kind of bringing in a little bit of the influence in the early period, and then kind of going away from it pretty quickly. But anyway, just an absolutely great album. This is one of those albums that every single track on here would be a best track on somebody else's album. And I think the if you haven't listened to this album in a long time, obviously everyone knows Welcome to the Jungle, Paradise City. Those are like the big tracks. I think the second half of this album is even better than the first half. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what some of your favorite hair metal or glam metal albums are, because there's definitely more than this that I could have talked about. Just a bunch of great ones in that mid to late 80s period. But let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. And that's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.